All right. Welcome to the show. Today I have the absolute privilege of hosting my beloved brother-in-law, Rabbi Shoff, to have a discussion. We're going to see where it goes. Welcome, Rabbi Shoff.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm going to call you Zev because that's what's going to come out of my mouth, even though we know it is the Walter show. And I'm really excited to be here with you, brother-in-law Walter.
All right. So I thought we would kick it off to talking about, different Jewish issues. And I thought one topic we could really talk about is what we think is the right solution for the Israeli army vis-a-vis the Haredi population. It's a major topic right now. Just to give the listeners a little introduction, traditionally in the state of Israel, right at the beginning, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben Gurion signed an allowance for yeshiva bochurim not to have to serve while they're in yeshiva. This was created at a time when the yeshiva community was very, very small and in its infancy. Now that is certainly not the case. Thank God, it is a huge, thriving community in Israel, and the exemption still applies, and it's a major issue now because Israel has real defense needs. There's a major there's a major need for people serving in the army. I mean, I guess that's disputable, and also there is a fairness question where many soldiers, religious soldiers, not religious soldiers, have done reserve duty for years in this conflict. Many and because of the situation of the exemption, so even Haredi or ultra-Orthodox people that are working now, but because they didn't go to the regular army, they're not part of reserve units, and so they don't take part in that, and so this has created understandable animosity of like, hey, why are we serving and you not? So this is like the issue. How would you describe it before we
I
come
have
up with
so many
solutions?
thoughts that I think it would take ages to break it down. Let me ask you a different question, a sincere but different question. The Arab community in Israel does not serve in combat in the army. Why is that?
That's right.
Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think that's a really good idea because they are not at all loyal citizens of the state of Israel, and they are extremely dangerous, and they do not accept the concept of the state of Israel. It has been very clear since October 7th, but even before that, the majority of Arab Israelis consider themselves Palestinians, and I don't think that they have a vested interest in the security of the state in the same way that we do. And even if what we've seen since October 7th, even being materially way better off than the other Arabs, meaning it did not stop them. You see, Gaza was completely destroyed. The war was designed to destroy Gaza, meaning from the Palestinian side, meaning the Palestinians designed Gaza so that it would need to be destroyed. It was a successful place. Gaza could be an Emirati type of state. It could be very, very wealthy, easily. And they've been given more aid than most countries in the world, and they just wanted to destroy it. So I just don't see.
So you say
Arabs.
these are, this is like a fifth column in the country. This is a group of people that will sabotage your army. You can't let them in. Now, do you accept that if somebody in the country has a real ideological exception, in other words, religiously, they really do not believe in being part of this army, that it's not in the best interest of us to have them in the army? That's fair?
I would.
No, in other words, you would say maybe we could use these people.
First of all, I do agree that there are major religious concerns that the Haredi populace has about serving in the army as it is today. As a Haredi Jew myself, I don't accept that the idea that serving in a Jewish army is a
That's what you believe.
Right.
Okay, so let's start with you. That's what you believe. But a Satmar Chassid, let's take a Satmar Chassid who does believe that an Arab is allowed to live in the state of Israel, have full rights, have his beliefs, even vis-a-vis Palestine, and we don't deport all of these people presently. So would we hold the same standard for a Satmar Chassid? Try to treat him with respect, recognize his religion is a different thing than mine. And let me explain what I mean by this. Why am I going here? Because for a modern Orthodox Jew, or a Dati Le'umi Jew, or a Chardal Jew, everyone has their flavor, right? So now you have a Jew who's looking at the Haredi and says, I'm reading the same Torah as you. I'm reading the same Rambam as you. You guys have it wrong in your religion. We talk to them and we talk to each other in a way that we wouldn't talk to a Christian. You would never have a person get up and say, "Excuse me, Jesus is not the Messiah, and here's why," as a member of public policy, right? We wouldn't do that. We would say, "Listen, you have your religion, I have my religion. We've got to figure out how to work together. Let's understand the differences between one and the other and move forward with this," right? I mean, is that right?
So that is I don't automatically accept that we must accept like bad interpretations, and I also don't accept that
Whoa.
anybody. I also don't accept one second. I don't accept that.
You think,
I
wait,
don't.
let's go to the first one at a time. You think we
Yeah.
should be legislating what is and isn't a good interpretation of
No.
scripture?
No. I don't. I
Okay, so
don't
then you're going to
accept.
back
I
off
don't
on that
accept.
one.
If someone would say my religion allows me to murder people, and you just have to accept that because of freedom of religion, and that's
You know what?
liberal. We would not
We
we
do
would
have
not
to
we would
accept.
not accept that.
I
What?
disagree with you.
Okay.
We do. We have to accept that that's what you believe only. We then have to legislate your behavior. So in other
There
words,
there are there are
if a
obligations
person
people
says,
have to a
"I
country.
believe we have to kill these people," I don't believe you can punish him, or you can tell him you're not allowed to believe that, or you're not allowed to think that. You could tell him, "If you'd like to live in this country, you'll obey these laws, or we'll incarcerate you or put you to death." That we have the right to do.
All right.
That's a
So
very
under
big
the
difference.
so on.
If you want to come to the Haredim, whoa. So if you want to come to the Haredim and say, "Hey guys, listen, your religion is your religion, and it's clearly different than mine as the Chardal or Dati Leumiju in many ways, because you believe about the army this and I believe that, but you live in this country and we're going to imprison you." That's a conversation that is step two. But I'm talking about, do they have the freedom to believe this?
But I
And
don't
then let's look at
know
how
if
we treat
anybody
everybody else who has a different religion.
claim that I don't assume that the claim is. I don't think anybody makes the claim that they believe that serving in the army is against their religion.
I
I
think
don't.
that's not Hasidim do,
Okay, maybe the Satmar
right?
Hasidim do,
The
but the,
majority
but the
are
Satmar
those
Hasidim
who
are
are in the extreme anti the Medina.
right. But what troubles me about this whole what
How
I
would you
think is
deal with
so
those guys?
frustrating.
Let's start with them and let's
Yeah.
move let's start at the extreme.
No. What
There's a
what
group of people that don't accept the Medina. They don't accept the country as legitimate. They think Jews shouldn't be in charge of a country, right?
Okay.
Not
So
all
then
of
they
them are
should.
crazy into account. Then they
So
should move.
so I mean, people. It is a
You throw out
false
them and the
claim.
Arabs.
It
I
is a
want to
it
know
is a
how you
false
deal with those
it is
Arabs.
is a false it is a false it is a false claim. It is a false claim to live in a country and to deny the legitimacy of the country.
That is your personal
But that is
morals and your
but
personal
that is not
ethics.
but that is not but that is not. You see, that is your. I
So
think
you
I
throw
think
them
what you're
out.
dealing with is more of an edge case because
Okay. Well, then
I
explain how you would deal with the edge case. That way we can continue to move into the center.
the edge case. If you have a group of people, forget about the army. If you have a group of people that doesn't accept the legitimacy of the government of the country, they shouldn't get rights and benefits from that country. You can
So
you
that's
can you
not an
can yeah,
army
but
question. You would like to deport those people.
the general Haredi populace serves in the people that you're
Let's go
referring to, the
back to that.
Satmar. They don't serve. One second. The people that you're referring to do not serve in the Knesset. They don't vote. They are logically consistent down the line. They
Okay.
try to do their own power services. So what I'm talking about a population of people who, me and you, are Haredi Jews. We don't think. One
What
second.
would
We
you
don't
do with
think. We
those
don't
first
think.
people?
What?
Why are you dodging around this? If it's that you deport them,
No, because I'm
and
not. I don't think. I don't want to get stuck
you don't
on
think this
on
answers
on
the
on a
whole
group of
subject.
people.
I don't think so either.
No,
But
what
for
I'm saying
those
is
people, you're not giving me
what
a
I'm saying is
soundbite here.
what I'm saying is you can't have your cake and eat it. Meaning, if you take part in the state and you believe that the defense of the state is a good thing because of
So
your,
can
then
I
you can't
restate
dodge.
what you're saying so that I can make
Yeah,
sure that I've digested it properly? You're
right.
saying you don't have a lot of patience for people that don't believe in the state. But if we're going to accept them as part of our country for some reason, then they better be disenfranchised from everything, basically, on their own accord. And then we can look the other way if they don't serve in the army, because they also don't vote. They also don't this and that. And some public services you don't even think they should get. Okay. But for everyone else who basically is engaged in the society, just doesn't want to serve in the army, you feel like it's a different question.
Right.
Okay.
And also, it's a situation that the groups that you're talking about are a very, very small minority. I was in Israel. I saw them. I saw the way they rolled. I was friends with some of them. I lived in Mea Shearim for a few years. But this is certainly not the mainstream approach, because
I will say that what you said about they should leave the country, I find that very troubling in the sense that you have families who were here for 300 years. And they lost children every winter to
yeah.
starvation, and they dedicated themselves to living in the same little area in Mea Shearim or in Yerushalayim. And now some people showed up in 1948 and said, "Hey, what are you doing here serving my army?" And they said, "We don't really know who you are. We don't agree with the stuff you stand
Yeah.
for.
No,
and then get out." What?
I misspoke. What I'm saying is that the question at hand. I think it very much ignore that population, because that population excludes themselves completely. But when I
And it's a
watch the
side
Knesset,
thing.
when
The
I
problem
watch the
is,
Knesset, yeah,
might
when I
not
watch
be. Yeah, when you watch the Knesset, go ahead.
Knesset proceedings, well, I'm watching Haredim taking part in the state. So they whatever, them throwing bananas at each other. You know what I'm saying? When it's very funny to what, it's almost as funny as the House of Commons. And I think I would enjoy it more if I was more fluent in Hebrew. I'm saying, but
Any
what
idea what we're talking about? It'd be great.
I'm going to push the conversation slightly differently, meaning I think that the problem over here is solvable by everybody involved. And I think that if there would be some.
There's a reason why I brought up that extreme case, because I think when it comes to someone who seems to have a really different religion, that we have this understanding as Westerners of like, listen, you know what? Your religion is your religion. We have to try to work with that. If you had a group of people who came from a religion that says we are peaceful people, we don't serve in the army. That's just what we do. We're Jainists. Instead, we won't even pick an apple off a tree. That's what we do. So we might think they're bonkers. You're allowed to think that. But you have to work with what's real. So what I've seen over the years when I lived in Israel, and I saw public discourse that went something like this. Lapid getting up in the Knesset and saying, it says in the Torah, 6 days shall you work, not 6 days shall you sit in kollel. I would see public discourse about whether or not you should have separate buses for men and women or separate seating. That was an argument over Torah sources in Shulchan Aruch. And members of Knesset like Amsalam and other people standing up and saying, nowhere in Halakha does it say this. And it's like, yeah, but in their religion it does, because they're Haredim.
I come to this.
Look at it as if you were looking at. Of course, it's not a different. We're all Am Echad. We all love each other. But I'm just saying. Imagine this was a real religious difference. It's not something you could prove.
But that isn't the claim of the Haredim.
Sure, it is.
Meaning, I'm only dealing
the
with.
Haredim believe that Torah.
The Haredim don't believe. Do the Haredim believe? Do the Haredim believe that there should be an army? Yes.
That's a good question.
So I'm not meaning I am not saying, one second, I am not suggesting the way I think that Israel would be safest to maintain a exemption for current, meaning all students that are actually in yeshiva, and the state of Israel should also recognize that the Jewish religion acknowledges that the Torah study helps to protect. And the reason why I think Israel should do that
for the government to recognize that. Why can't I just read that?
I want to. Let me explain why. Well, look, as much libertarian I am, I recognize that the countries that I live in are not libertarian. It's like somebody that says to me, "Hey, why are you against open borders? Why are you against open borders? Aren't you a libertarian?" I'm like, yeah, I'd be pro open borders if we had no welfare and we had no massive amounts of government things, but we don't live in that society. So I'm not going to be like a libertarian to cut off my one hand, and then it doesn't make any sense. So what I'm saying is that from a policy perspective, from the state of Israel, I think they could deal with. Israel is a Jewish state, and I think Israel has a. So what I'm saying is, they created a state that was very antagonistic. The state of Israel was antagonistic to the Haredim from the beginning, and that's created this bad blood. And I'm just talking from a practical standpoint. I watched during COVID of the Israeli government make an absolute fool out of themselves, because they tried to close down all the yeshivas and the chadarim, and the Haredi people were like, nah, we're not doing that. So it made them look dumb. So the current bill that they're trying to do is they're trying to sanction yeshiva bachrim, and they're trying to sanction kollel people. And all that would do all they will do is create more animosity. Because as Smotrich pointed out, is that no guy is leaving Kolo because you're banning him from a babysitter. Or what you're going to end up doing is sending him to Rahman al-San like an overcrowded babysitter. So you're not achieving anything. Also, what you end up doing is you end up making the workforce in Israel smaller because you push people to stay in Kolo maybe longer than they would just to avoid draft issues, which is both bad for the economy and bad for the society. It's like what they're doing currently, the current bill is insanely stupid, is what I'm saying. What they want to do. What I would recommend, and this is what I'd like to hear your perspective on, is the moment someone decides to leave yeshiva, the army, by the way, the majority of the army is what they refer to in Israel as jobniks. And that's the majority now.
And are we desperate for those? Are we desperate for those? Or are we desperate for combat?
What I think
we need
is
more
that
people getting coffee.
We need. I do believe that every extra person helps in terms of the war effort. A, and B, I think that as technology moves forward, there are a lot of sophisticated technological jobs in the army that could be filled by Haredim, and they could be done from Bnei Brak. Meaning, somebody needs to get creative over here. There is no reason why a bunch of Haredim can't sit in a room.
You believe in supply and demand.
Right.
You believe in the free market. So I want to tell you something. They don't need the Haredim, and I want to prove it to you. I have no evidence to back this up. I know that Fagelin says one way and this one says another way. I have no way to figure this out, but I can prove it to you. When people need me, they come with their hat in hand and they talk gently and they say, Rabbi Landau, Rabbi Hirsch, with deep respect, we're in trouble here. Our country's in trouble. And he says, I can't send my boys to this army because from my religious orientation, it was not what God wants. So they say, well, what would it take? We'll bend over backwards. We'll set up rooms in Bnei Brak that are only run by Bnei Brakers. And here, that's what they would do. They would say, what does it take? Because they wouldn't spend all of their energy on media campaigns to vilify and say the most horrendous things. The fact that that's what they're doing tells me they don't need me, because no one who has ever needed me in my life has come to me with this sort of orientation.
So I reject your argument, even though it's a perfectly logical one, because your claim is like this. Generally, in supply and demand, if someone really needs you, then they'll come to you, which I've found to be true in my life, and you found to be true in my life. So why do I disagree with here? So I find one exception to this rule, and that is that governments seem to be able to work so short term and so in their own interests. So it is not obvious to me that that logic holds in this regard. Meaning, you say to yourself, why are these people acting in a way that's totally against their interests? I see that in my country too. When we're $28 trillion in debt, I see a lot of incentives for them not to do the right thing. That's A. B. I believe,
that's true in
which
the
is
free
part of
market
my
also.
suggestion. I don't know. I think I see
the way there's always people that will choose immediate gains.
Yeah, but
right.
But in the free market, there's always a cost to that. In the free market, you go out of business. Governments do not go out of business. Political parties do not go out of business. The Democrats, if they would be a business, would be bankrupt. And so would the Republicans. But I also agree with you, and I think this is where the stickiness actually is, where a lot of the resentment is that I don't think the regular army needs the Haredim. I really believe that. I think that
why would you pull people out of a regular productive working job?
Israel has
to go because Bnei Brak in an office.
Well, because I didn't finish. I don't think the regular army, the regular army of troops that are currently drafted and serving full-time in the army needs the Haredim. But I do think the reservists need the Haredim, and I think what ends up happening is because you didn't put them because the regular army doesn't need them and doesn't have that immediate push, so then you have a shortfall at the Miluim side, and the reason why I think that you need them is because I've heard from our family members, our cousins, I've spoken to them about this, and what they claim is that their husbands are serving an extreme amount of time in reserve duty in Gaza. And I think that, and also when you say an office, I don't know if that's exactly right. You could have Haredim serving in intelligence roles or flying drones, and this would be enormously beneficial to the Haredi community too. Because if you take somebody after Israel's high tech sector, Israel's startup nation is in many ways because of the army, because you have people that have taken many of the major cybersecurity firms that have come in Israel are Haredi. Are because of the army. And also Haviv pointed this out on his podcast. Haredim do serve Israel. They do things like chaverim, and they have they do hatzalah. They are not against giving to their country. They are against the way that it's trying to be pushed upon them, and against the way that it's trying to be a threat to the yeshiva system, which it is. But I don't know. What I'm saying is that to me, the solution here, if people would come, like you said, having it, what serving, meaning serving the
issue is army. I have a question for you. How do you explain Sherut Leumi, that a religious girl can select to go work in a kindergarten for free for a couple of years instead of going to the army, or give out coffee in the hospital on a little trolley and go from room to room with biscuits and coffee instead of serve? And you say, well, that's good for the country. Like, how is that? First of all, I don't think it's good for the country. Honestly, I think it's better for the country if you'd pay a living wage to these girls, let them start saving up money, let them go to college, right? Let them get ready to buy a house.
I would never defend
But I don't understand why, in a country where we can have Sherut Leumi be a very valuable thing because it's dedicating. So you can't see how somebody would look at Torah study that way. You can't see how somebody would say that.
I do look at Torah study that way. I do look at Torah study that way. I accept that's my thesis. I accept that the Torah study should be looked at that way, and the state should look at it this way. I just think that post yeshiva or post kollel, it would be extremely worthwhile for, and I'm not share it to me. I don't think you should take a Haredi guy.
And for there to be more people for Miluim?
Yes, I think it'd be. Look, if it is true, let's say you have a guy that he drives.
But you know that all the people that weren't combat soldiers also really aren't doing Miluim. All the jobniks are also not really so involved in Miluim.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think that's true for certain jobniks. But I'm saying the guy, when I say jobniks, I don't mean a guy making coffee for a general. I should have been more specific about that. I mean a guy, right, or guys flying drones, or guy stopping Iranian
These people
hackers.
That are sending out into Gaza, these are not the people that are being sent into Gaza. No,
but I think that
it's our religious
they're serving. No, I don't mean. But you don't. It's one thing. During the Gaza war, right? There were many fronts to that war. Somebody has to watch the drones flying over and spot people. Somebody has to.
I understand.
That would be somebody has to drive a truck from one spot to the next spot in Gaza, a dangerous position. But he doesn't have to have. When I say jobnik, what I meant is that it's going to be very hard. What happens in the army is you get 3 years training, and you become part of a cohesive unit, and then you carry on that Kravi unit later on in life. I don't think that's possible to take a Haredi guy at 32 and let's stop, learn how to, I had a friend who moved to Israel later in life, made Aliyah, not a Haredi guy, and he was drafted, and he learned how to fire, he fires artillery. That is a I'm not saying that Haredim should be exempt from Kravi. I just think from combat, I just think practically you should have a Miluim program that
the purpose is just for Miluim. The purpose is that there should be more people trained so that in times of extreme need, right, these reserve people can be called up and more evenly share the being away from family.
And even if I had friends who
you believe there's no other solution other than the Haredim. In other words, the Haredim are the problem. Most people in the country are going to Miluim, with the exception of Haredim. Your typical person working in Tel Aviv in high tech. Is this true?
I can't then justify why somebody else who is working a regular job, who was Sioni, and he has to go serve in Gaza, and why somebody who doesn't shouldn't be sent to maybe with an M16 and sent to guard something in the Shamron while their trained soldiers are fighting in Lebanon and Gaza. I don't see why that's fair. I just don't. If let's say if they both have jobs, if one guy's working in Tel Aviv and the other guy's working in Tel Aviv, or whatever, they both have jobs, or whatever. Why should one be exempt just because of what would be the justification? What would be the yeshiva justification for that? Why should he be exempt from Miluim?
I'll tell you what the justification would
Okay.
theoretically be, even though I kind of agree with you. But I think that the argument would be this. The argument would be like, I'm a religious Jew. I'm a religious Jew, and I follow the instructions of the Gedolei Yisrael. It's part of my religion. The way you say, well, who says the Meraglim were wrong? Like, okay, but my religion, which is clearly different than yours on this thing, we, right? And I don't like saying that because I don't mean that as two different religions, but I mean, you treat me with the respect you would a Christian, right? That this is what we really think. We didn't make this up to get out of this. We've been writing books on this for a few hundred years. We believe this. We think the right way to make these major decisions is to go to Gedolei Yisrael, right? And ask them directly, how do we handle this? It relates a lot of things. It relates what is the appropriate level of emunah, of bitachon, right? It relates to the fundamentals of the faith. I'll tell you something. When there was a question about reparations and whether we should take reparations from the Germans. So Rabbi Shlomo Lawrence, right, the famous Rabbi Shlomo Lawrence of B'mechitzasam, In Their Shadow, right, famous. He was a member of the Knesset. He went to the Chazon Ish and said, what is your position? Should we be taking reparations from the Germans or not? As in Knesset, right? What should we vote? And Chazon Ish says, I don't know. I need to think about it. This is a man who answered a lot of questions off the cuff about life and death issues. He said, I don't know. And he gave a few days. And after a few days, he said, I still don't know. That was the question. Now, everyone listening, I imagine, everyone watching this had an opinion when I asked that question. Should you take the reparations or not? Right? We have these opinions. We just have opinions. So it is the position of, and by the way, about the halacha questions the Chazon Ish would ask, right? The major questions that he answered flippantly, off the cuff, most of us don't know the first thing about. So we just have to realize that there is an orientation in the world that these great people should be ones leading these decisions. And so therefore this person says the army, even miluim, even these things is, right, like it's not the way we should be handling ourselves.
If it is true, if it is true, if it was true, if it was true that the Gedolei Yisrael, current and before,
how long would it take to train somebody? How
once I
long?
was
If you have to think of
if
an
it
issue,
would
6
be
months, they'd send them
if it would
tomorrow.
be one second, hear me out. If it would be the case, I agree with you. If it would be the case that the Gedolei Yisrael would instruct and say, under no circumstances, it's against the Torah for any Haredi Jew to serve in any capacity in the army. If that would be their position, I would accept that. But I don't think what makes me frustrated about the situation in Israel is that I don't think that is a Haredi position. So you end up having the state to demonizing the Haredim if they hold that position, where instead of coming up with a creative solution that would make everyone happy, you talk about like Sheirut Lemi. I'll give you an example. So I said this to and Rivka on our chat. I said to her, you want the Haredim to serve? I just saw a Likudnik MP claiming that, like Uri Zohar said, my friends, we were robbed, that nobody in the secular Jews do not receive any proper religious education. And if they do, it's from people who are not religious, and it's absurd. Bring them to yeshiva, and the Haredim will volunteer to teach them a thing or two. I think that'd be a wonderful outcome. What I'm saying is that, like, there's nobody. If it was true, if that was the Haredi position, fine. But I don't think it's the Haredi position. And you want to get into like practical things like how long would have served. I agree. Those would all have to be ironed out, and that would require somebody coming to hand in hand to Rabbi Landau and the Gedolei Yisrael and saying, under what circumstances could this be done? It would require good faith. It would require trust building. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is that
why wouldn't they do that?
Why wouldn't they do that?
Because points by vilifying. Is that the answer?
Right now, I'm not saying they're the same as Israelis, but right now I'm watching in Minnesota, where both sides, where the Democrats are trying to get more people killed on the streets of Minnesota in order to make political points. There are people in politics who are profoundly evil and do things for their own good. I believe people like Lapid and a lot of are like that. They profoundly hate Haredi Jews. They think that Judaism is this archaic thing, and they want to do anything that they can. And the purpose of trying to draft Haredi Jews into the army is in order to make them not Haredi Jews. I think that is a belief. And also, you know how, like, it always makes me laugh. I always see this so often. There's a new Haredi unit, and like I see all the people here, and I'm like, none of them look Haredi to me. Or do you mean that, like? And I think it's great, by the way, because that just means that you have like Datilo me guys getting to serve in a more religious unit. So that's fantastic. I don't take away from that. Like, everyone's better off. But but it isn't true. It's like, people like say like, oh, there's a Haredi guy who like, and then who believes, and then you like list a bunch of like things down the line. It's like,
Anti-Haredi attitude.
yeah,
Right. But
like it's
doesn't he
like
have those
Mamdani,
things that come off his head? He smells
yeah,
like a filthy bitch. I mean, the guy's got to be correct,
right. It's like Mamdani. It's like Mamdani, like that you must
Very
he like
funny.
he like he like hired like a rabbi who is like a transgender man,
Rabbi
Satmar
Addy.
Chassid drop out, and it's like he's his rabbi. So it's like, and then it's like, and then you speak to this person, it's like really he's just an atheist activist who like used to be Jewish. So it's like you so you don't have a rabbi, you just have another like liberal nut job in your thing. So I don't know how we got to this, but
Hi, Rabbi.
yeah,
Hi,
yeah.
Rabbi. That was my favorite video.
So it's like
Got to put a link to that.
so I don't, obviously it's insane for the IDF to be like, we created a Haredi unit. You see, the yarmulke, the hat is made out of velvet and it's black instead of green. It's obviously not, we're not, it's obviously, you see, we brought more kosher food here. That's obviously not the issue. The issue is that the army is designed to be a melting pot of Israeli society, and it was designed to make it homogeneous. That's why they created things like Sheret Leumi. It was a socialist country that believed that you could bend people into a certain type of society by making them serve. I reject that out of hand.
Well, I think that the fact that you're saying that is something that I kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to know that for sure, but I do know that that is what the Haredim think. They are as convinced as you are that you've got 5 fingers on your hand, that the purpose of the army and the reason they want to draft Haredim, they are absolutely convinced that that is because they want them to no longer be Haredim. Whether it's true or false is another topic that I don't know how to unpack and figure out. But what is true is that they really believe that. And anybody who comes to me and says, nah, they don't believe it, they just say that because they want to get out of things, like, that's a very useless
No,
position.
I believe
That'll
it.
get
I
you
believe it.
nowhere.
I believe it. That's, of course, and that's why there's so much bad faith in the system. Because I believe it. I believe it. I believe that there's that
Wow.
many in the
How do you
secular.
solve that? How do you solve that? If you are a well-meaning, you're one of our holy cousins, right, who serves in the army in order to defend the Jewish people and the Holy Land, which is something that on a personal level I endlessly admire and I think is a noble thing to do. And I think it's a huge mitzvah. And these Hesder boys are heroes to me. And that's what I really think. And you could, so whether or not I think the Haredim should serve is a separate question to that one. But what do you have when you have a well-meaning person who wants the Haredim to serve because they want their husband home on Miluim, and the Haredim are the only answer. The people in Tel Aviv are all serving. Everyone else is all there for Miluim, according to you. And there's nothing we can use those Arabs for. Nothing. We can't put them in a room somewhere to get the coffees or someone else. Nothing. It's only the Haredi Jews over 40 years old with their pot bellies, right? And and their takeaway containers of chopped liver
They might not have pot bellies.
like those guys, right? The buttons have all come off of their shirt. Right?
That the highest life expectancy in Israel is Bnei Brak. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just complete side, but yeah, I heard this from Rabbi Nassan Wiederborn.
Right, that's what I thought you were about to say.
It might be true also, but I'm saying, it turns out that like having a connection with God is way more important than watching, how much you jog every day, watching your steps. I believe that. But so sorry if I interrupted you. What were you saying? So what would I say to them?
Yeah. What is the solution in order to, in other words, for that person who isn't trying to create a melting pot? They're willing to try to allow Haredim, right, to say, if you come in as a Lubavitcher, I want you to leave as a Lubavitcher. You come in as a Slonomer, and you come in as a Litvish. I want you to have every opportunity to feel that you're fully supported in your religious needs. We're not going to say, well, this is kosher. No, if you don't think it's kosher, then don't tell me that according to your interpretation of religion, it is. Because that's all they're doing.
My solution would be that the only way that any solution could ever happen is that, like I said, for the heads of the army and the state to come hand in hand to the Gedolei Israel and say, we accept that this country was designed in a way to be in many ways antagonistic to the ultra-Orthodox. It was created by people who wanted to abandon Judaism.
They can just say, what do you need?
Weitzman and then Jabotinsky talked about talked about ultra-Orthodox life as the dust, the rust of exile. These people were not complementary to Judaism. And so what you would need is that they would go into the Haredi community and say, we want to solve this problem, and we will do anything that you say to make it work. That would be the first step. And I think a lot of things require. Maybe you'll say that that's not practical. That's ridiculous. No one's going to do that. But until that happens, until there's real trust building, it's a little bit like I've been thinking a lot about judicial reform. The whole mess that happened before October 7th. Both sides were wrong, because even though it is obvious that the Supreme Court needs serious reform, but there wasn't enough trust built in either side. And you can't have a judicial less powerful than the legislative branch, and you can't have a runaway judicial either. So if Israel wants to solve the problem of judicial reform, they must get together and create a constitution. And without a constitution, there can be no judicial reform, because the building a constitution exercise requires trust on both sides and requires people who are not idiots. Lapid cannot write the constitution. Unless Netanyahu could. It requires people who are sober and who are ready to have real meaningful discussions and care about the long term. I'm not 100% sure if there are people around
I think at
that
the
today.
Continental Congress, there was an enormous amount of beer served. That's what they used to drink. I don't think it was people who were sober. I think when you look into it,
no,
they were
practically. I think to get this done, you would need an enormous amount of beer. I mean, sober in their outlook. But yes, So I think there needs to be a major trust building exercise, and that's not a small thing. I don't think that could happen in a day. But right, one thing that has to happen is for both sides to recognize that they both have the best interests of the country in mind. And
okay, just by the way, before we continue, just AI overview here. Delegates at the 1787 Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, continuation of the spirit of the Continental Congress, were heavy drinkers, concluding their work with a massive documented celebration. Days before signing, 55 attendees consumed 12 bottles of beer, 22 of porter, 54 of Madeira, 60 of claret, and it goes on. Not only that, that beer was invented by like monks. Like originally, the ways of beer today, many of those things were invented by like monks who were living in caves. Reading the New Testament, thee and thou and all. The drink.
I heard something great recently, that someone pointed out that the anti-drinking campaign that's been going on over the last, say, 20 years has been very bad for young people, because people are not dating properly anymore, and maybe a couple of shots and a beer is what it takes for a guy to go over to ask a girl out, and it'd be a very healthy, and that's a very healthy thing, because this internet dating is a disaster. Also interesting, I actually heard, how like in the Gemara it talks a lot about date beer.
Sure. Carmiel, date ale, unbelievable product.
Right. So interesting thing I found out is one of the caliphs. So in Islam they have they have something called the hadiths, which are like supplementary writings to the Quran. And a lot of them have been forged. And one time, one of the caliphs really enjoyed dove racing and date beer. So he magically produced the hadith that said the prophets were into both of those.
Well,
so when you
really
see
good.
you see in the Gemara, like Mafricha Yona and like beer, that's what they're into. Of course, Islam is complete. I mean, it can't be more of a forgery than the Quran of itself. I'm saying, so like, I don't have any.
This is, by the way, the product that everybody has to know about. This Carmiel date ale out of Israel is outrageously good, and it's gluten-free. So it's Pesach. This is like how you have a beer on Pesach.
Oh, I've never had it. That's so cool. We gotta have it.
The last I checked, at the upscale Pesach program, where I will be this year in Palm Springs. Come see me.
Oh, nice.
At that program, years ago, they had this. They were serving this, and it was wildly good. And then I drank it during the year. Also, it wasn't. It's not just a Pesach supplement.
Dates are delicious.
Product from the holy city of Carmiel.
Dates are really good. I really enjoy dates. I find anybody trying to use date as a substitute for something else, it's always disgusting. Like someone's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make date brownies with chocolate. And it's like, why would you ruin both of those things? But I'm happy to eat a date. So look at this.
I feel like there is this idea that people need a little alcohol to successfully date could be a major marketing thing for the date ale brand.
I have a date on a date.
That's right. Which kind of date do you want? Either way, we've got your solution.
We'll give you the strongest date. After two of these,
What is this hadith about date, ale, and dove racing? That's amazing.
I gotta find.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna look into that.
Right. All right. I have to leave soon. I think we have to cut it here. But what do you? How do you wanna end off on this?
I really think that we nailed something down that we both agree on. And that is that I really, really think we have to look at the people on the other side of the aisle as people who genuinely believe what they think. And for that reason, I think that when a person is looking at the Haredim, because that's who we're focusing in on, and whether or not they're going to serve in the army, I think we have to understand with some sort, any bit of disrespect to their beliefs, any bit of like, you guys are just lazy scoundrels, is going to push this back a long way. Whereas an attitude of, we respect that you have your beliefs, we respect that you mean what you say, whether we agree or disagree, we may still need to ask you to serve in the army, but this is not. And I understand, by the way, one last thing, and that is that somebody who just lost their child or their friend or their spouse is not somebody that you can necessarily speak to in a level headed way about the subject. So they'll feel extremely emotional, and that's a big problem. And it could be that full communities are feeling that way. And I'm not really sure how to deal with that, because if they're going to use that frustration and that anger, right, which is justifiable and it makes sense in a way that's less than productive in moving the needle, there may be a way, there may really be a way that the Haredim would be happy to serve under certain conditions and certain guarantees. And certainly there may be. I don't see that that's even being advanced, which tells me that the people are not so serious. Now, you'll tell me, well, the government isn't serious because governments are never so serious. So every one of us in this conversation needs to think, am I serious about this or not? When I have a conversation at my Shabbos table or in my life about those Haredim or whatever it is, am I looking at real people who believe in going to the Gedolei Yisrael, who we all seem to accept that Ruchaim Kanievsky and Ovadia Yosef and one after another are people that we really do think, and they did seem to have this position, this extreme position against the army for Haredim. And so where are these people coming from? Are they real, sincere, decent human beings? Maybe you believe they're misguided about this subject tremendously, or is this some sort of like, these rotten, lazy, they'll do whatever they can get away from? As long as that conversation's there, I don't see any way to make any progress.
That is 100%. I agree. And also the draft bill that they're currently advancing, which sanctions Haredim for living their life,
Gonna be worse.
it makes things worse. So that's what I'm saying. The whole thing has to be restarted. Has to be looked at from a different perspective. And I agree with you. And that is the only way really to advance any society.
I'll
And
tell
it's
you something.
amazing.
You quoted Smotrich before. In my opinion, this is a person who does span. He generally says level-headed things, and he's not always cursing everybody out who's to the right of him.
Yeah. I don't. I agree with that. And again, I just think that like humanity is good at solving problems. If you look at companies, you have diverse people working in companies that build amazing things. Look all around you. It's just like billions of dollars of stuff being created by people who are different, who fundamentally don't get along necessarily, who have figured out a way to work together. And I think if that attitude is brought to this discussion, you can make tremendous progress and it could be advanced. And I think the only reason why it's not is because you have people in bad faith making that argument.
Listen, I have to say, I think we really did see that in America with all the positive and negative feelings that people had about President Trump. I think that taking a more business perspective and putting business people involved in negotiations, Abraham Accords, so many other things, who just came in it for business, with the business perspective, like you just said, I think that really has made an enormous difference in a lot of things getting done. That that Israel could probably use that. And I know that when I say something about Trump, that can polarize people to one side or the other. But I think this is right.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I gotta go. This has been enormously. I hope we could do this again. This is